folks, this is it, the last Metroid game review before Nintendo takes God knows how long to release the next one. Now we've been through our ups, we've been through our downs, but overall the Metroid series is still something I recommend to everyone to at least give a shot. Now the first two Metroid Prime games were released for the GameCube, but in 2007 the then new Nintendo Wii finally got a slice of the Metroid action. So without further ado, here's my review of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption for the Nintendo...
John, aren't you forgetting something?
I already finished the Sonic interview sequel. Took me longer than I thought it was going to, but...
No, not that. Isn't there another Metroid game you're forgetting about, man?
Metroid Prime Pinball?
John, just reviewed Metroid Prime Hunters already.
Alright, just give me the damn game.
Just think of it like this. Once you review it, you'll never have to play it again.
I guess you're right.
Unless it's Sonic 06.
Get out of here!
Leaving.
Alright, let's make this quick, shall we? In 2006, gamers retreated to Metroid Prime Hunters, Nintendo's attempt at bringing a Metroid Prime game to the ever-popular Nintendo DS. The Galactic Federation received a telepathic message from an unknown source speaking of an ultimate power located in the Alembic Cluster. Alembic, how do you pronounce that? The Galactic Federation sends Samus to investigate and see if this ultimate power really exists, telling her to keep it secret if it does, or destroy it if it's potentially dangerous. Yeah, nice try, guys. We all know you really want that shit for yourself, and just like your attempts at making Metroids, or copies of Mother Brain, or attempting to capture the X-Parasites, it was probably going to end in an absolute disaster. Unfortunately, 6 other bounty hunters were also aware of the ultimate power, consisting of Name Not Important, Who Cares, Whatever, Fuck All, Empty Space, and Silux, who's the only person I can immediately recall because everyone seems to like this asshole the most. Your job is to secure the ultimate power before these numbnuts do. That's it. The game really doesn't have a plot, you're just traveling from planet to planet, shooting things to advance into the next room, collect a trinket, escape the planet even though it doesn't explode, lather, rinse, repeat. So the story is really nothing to write home about, but how does it play? Short and to the point? Meh. You control Samus with the D-pad, but you turn your direction with the stylus. You can use the L and R triggers to fire your weapons. You jump by either tapping the screen twice quickly or by going out of your way to hit the A button. Frankly, this control scheme just makes my hands cramp up, even after putting about 2 hours into the game. There's also a control scheme that allows you to maneuver your arm cannon with the 4 face buttons, but it's incredibly awkward. You see, there's no lock-on feature in this game. Now, I can understand that with the stylus controls, but why the hell wouldn't you give us lock-on with a control scheme that's just a shameful attempt at mimicking an actual console controller? Why couldn't we just control Samus with the D-pad, shoot with the Y button, jump with the B button, use the morph ball with the A button, switch to missiles with the X button, lock on with the L button, and tilt the arm cannon with the R button? To be honest, guys, one of the main reasons why I've been so hesitant to review this game is because, well, I haven't beaten it. I can't beat it. I don't want to beat it. The overall structure of this game's single player and cramp-inducing controls just turn me off from this game completely. Most people that I know that enjoy this game are usually talking about the online multiplayer, but I don't hear nearly that amount of praise for the single player mode, which is most important to me in a Metroid game. In fact, another reason why I don't like this game is because it feels nothing like a Metroid game to me. From what I've played, there's barely any puzzles to solve, the planets are incredibly bland and way too similar in structure, and nothing in this game really impresses me. I mean, graphically, yeah, the game looks great for the Nintendo DS, but that's about it. This game has often been accused of trying to appeal to the Halo or Call of Duty crowd, and I can definitely see what they mean by that. Now don't get me wrong, I enjoy both Halo and Call of Duty, but Metroid is best known for its cosmic worlds and fun upgrades and using Samus' abilities to explore the unknown. Shooting was never the main focus. And that's all I can really say about it. Since I haven't beaten the game, nor do I care about the multiplayer because of the controls, this is one game I don't think I'll ever pick up again, and from someone like me, that's saying a hell of a lot. I mean, who knows, maybe underneath the awkward controls, the generic FPS setup, and online multiplayer lays a game that takes a certain kind of mind to enjoy. I doubt it. Now before I piss off any more Prime Hunter enthusiasts, let's get to the main... Yeah, technically there's one more title left to look at, a game that was also released for the Nintendo DS, Metroid Prime Pinball. Simply put, it's pinball, with a touch of Metroid. All the pinball tables are locations taken right out of the first Metroid Prime, as well as most of the music. Like my review of Sonic Spinball, there's not much else I can say about it because it's pinball and I'm not really a huge fan of the genre to begin with. I will say I do find something strangely satisfying beating the crap out of Stardust inside a pinball table. In the end, I really only had this game to complete my Metroid collection. I only wish I had the damn case for it. I hate leaving my DS games exposed like this. So with the release of the Nintendo Wii in 2006, it was only natural that the next sequel to the Prime series would be released on it. I mean, with the control setup that could potentially make any character with a gun in the first-person perspective fun, why not jump on the idea and apply it to the Metroid Prime universe? In August of 2007, Retro Studios released Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, the final game in the Prime series. Since I wasn't completely satisfied with Metroid Prime 2 for the GameCube, does Metroid Prime 3 contain everything I'm looking for in a Metroid game? Well, let's start with the plot. Now, I'm not exactly sure how long it's been since the events of Metroid Prime 2, but in the end, I really don't think it matters in the long run. After having a rather brief nightmare of Dark Samus returning from the dead, Samus is contacted by the Galactic Federation to rendezvous in the GFS Olympus to receive a new mission to complete. At this point, I'm just going to assume the bounty hunter part of Samus is merely a self-given title. Seriously, all of her work comes from the Galactic Federation. She might as well just be an employee there. Soon after, Samus meets up with Admiral Dane, where...
It's the SAS! Kill it! Kill it! Kill it!
Gandreda, enough.
Bitch.
Anyway, Samus meets with Admiral Dane along with other bounty hunters from the region, Rundus, who specializes in the element of ice, Gore, who has a machine fetish, and Gandreda, who, as you saw, can shapeshift. Admiral Dane informs the group that a virus, likely created by the space pirates, infected the Galactic Federation's Aurora units, organic supercomputers that control the Federation's main network. That's right, the Federation has a whole bunch of mother brains running their military defensive system.
What can possibly go wrong?
Actually, the Aurora units are quite tame and very articulate. Still though, after the events of the first Metroid title, wouldn't it be wise to leave something else in charge of the entire damn network? Well, because of the virus, the Galactic Federation was forced to shut down their Aurora units to prevent them from being destroyed, leaving them wide open to a space pirate attack. The group is ordered to find out just what the space pirates are up to, and wouldn't you know, just as soon as the orders are delivered, the space pirates begin to attack the ship. Now, if that is a convenience, I don't know what is. Samus and the other bounty hunters protect the ship as best as they can, eventually leading them to the planet Norian, where the space pirates are attempting to shut down the planet's defensive system. Not only that, but a meteor is heading right for the planet, which Samus needs to stop by reactivating the defense system's cannons. Upon doing this, Samus not only encounters a resurrected Meta Ridley, but as soon as she reaches the control tower, she, along with the rest of the bounty hunters, come across a rejuvenated Dark Samus, looking just as strong as ever.
Oh, I missed!
Now you're probably wondering just how the hell did Dark Samus return in the first place? Well, remember back in my Prime 2 review where I didn't feel like showing the 100% ending because I didn't feel like getting all the items? Yeah, turns out she never died in the first place. Don't you just love that?
Dark Samus, out of desperation I guess, strikes all the bounty hunters with something that infects each and every single one of them with Phazon, rendering them unconscious. When Samus wakes up, she finds herself back on the Olympus and in a new suit. The Federation explains to Samus that because of Dark Samus' attack, her body is now producing its own Phazon. The new suit, called the PED suit, allows her to tap into that Phazon and use it as an incredibly useful weapon. Not only that, but the PED suit now also allows Samus to absorb Phazon to recover health. That's right, what was without a doubt the most hazardous substance in the first two Prime games and the cause of all of our problems is now a healing bath for Samus. You can almost taste the radiation. Soon after, Samus is told that the other bounty hunters were given the same treatment and were sent on a mission while Samus was recovering. Turns out, more meteors, which are called Leviathan seeds, have crash-landed on other planets across the galaxy, spreading Phazon as a result. Remember the impact crater in Metroid Prime 1? It's kinda like that. Unfortunately, no one has heard back from the bounty hunters since they were deployed, so the Federation wants Samus to travel to each planet, destroy the respective Leviathan seed, and locate the missing bounty hunter. Metroid Prime 3 is very similar to Metroid Fusion in its structure. Along your journey, you're always in contact with Aurora Unit 242, who will proceed to tell you what your next objective is and mark its location on your map. It's like the hint system in the first two Prime games, only you can't turn it off and it happens much more frequently. As a result, Metroid Prime 3 is without a doubt the most linear of the Prime games, which doesn't completely bother me. I mean, the worst offender of the series is Other M by a long shot, but at the same time, I still enjoy the feeling of discovering new things on my own. In the end, it's all a matter of preference, and I think I spent a long enough time in these reviews telling you guys what I prefer in terms of structure. Anyway, everything that Samus could do in the first two Prime games, she can do just as well here, but as you can guess, the control scheme is a bit different. Aiming and shooting is all done with the Wiimote now, but you can still lock onto enemies to help you get a better shot. In fact, if you want to, you have the option of keeping your aiming reticle locked onto an enemy like in the earlier Prime games to help you blast them out of the sky more comfortably. It's my preferred method, as I'm really not a fan of the free aim system. It feels a bit inaccurate to me. Unfortunately, free aim is automatically enabled during boss fights, which bugs me a bit, but nothing I'll lose hair over. Well, whatever hair I have left anyway. Once again, you can also scan objects and creatures with your scan visor to help you advance your progression and get a better understanding of the planet you're in. But to be honest, I find it a bit wonky with the motion control. There are plenty of times where I wanted to scan something but nothing happened, or the motion control caused me to scan the other object just beside the thing I wanted to scan in the first place. This was especially apparent when I wanted to scan specific enemies like Shriek Bats, whom I always have a hard time scanning. There's also a lot more to scan this time around, so don't be surprised to activate scan mode and see your entire vision enveloped with the color blue. Your main objective in Metroid Prime 3 is to locate the Leviathan seeds on 3 specific planets, Brio, Elysia, and eventually the space pirate homeworld. You can also revisit Norian from earlier, but it's not really tied to the plot in any way. Brio is both a jungle and a fire pit. It's not really big though, and it's rather narrow. At least, yeah, it definitely reminds me a lot of Planet Aether, which is not necessarily a good thing, but it's not too bad. The space-powered homeworld is definitely the most action-packed and rather basic in structure. Overall, the planets themselves aren't really impressive in terms of scale, but I'm going to assume that was a deliberate design choice. I mean, could you imagine each planet being as big as, say, Talon 4 or Planet Aether? The game would take ages to beat. I'm guessing since Samus is the light suit from Prime 2, most of her upgrades went with it, as Samus only has the Charge Beam, Morph Ball bombs, and the Space Jump when she starts her journey. She can also perform the Spring Jump in Morph Ball mode by flicking the Wiimote upwards, so you no longer have to use bombs to climb up any tiny ledges. So with little to no upgrades, that means we're collecting them all over again, but hell, we're used to that at this point. Now over the course of the game, Samus will get all the familiar upgrades back, like the missiles, secret missiles, grapple beam, spider ball, and boost ball, and the screw attack. Now where was I? Oh yes, unlike Prime 2, Prime 3 decides to go back to familiar territory with beam upgrades. Eventually, Samus will acquire the Plasma Beam, which is again heat-based, and eventually Samus will get the Plasma Beam again. Oh, it's called the Nova Beam. Sorry about that. It was green, so I was thinking, yeah, anyway. Unlike Prime 1 or Prime 2, where each weapon upgrade was separate, Prime 3 decides to go the Metroid Fusion route and stack the weapons up, which I think is pretty cool for the sake of convenience, but I don't know, I kinda liked having the choice in the first two Prime games. Also, taking a note from Metroid Fusion, Samus will also get the Ice Missiles, allowing her to freeze things to gain access to previously unreachable areas. Returning from Metroid Prime 1 is the X-Ray Visor, not only allowing Samus to see hidden pathways and such, but it now also allows her to see hidden weak points in enemies, and combined with the Nova Beam, you can kill a lot of things in one hit. You won't gain access to this deadly combination until later in the game, but when you do get it, it's one of the most satisfying things you can do in this game, especially on assholes that gave you trouble in the first place. Samus also has a few new tricks up her sleeve, and by that I mean her gunship. For the first time ever, Samus can actually use her gunship not only as a means to advance to other areas, but to attack enemies as well. But it's pretty damn limited. Well, first off, your ship has its own ammo count, which you can expand by collecting missile expansions for the ship, but the biggest problem is that you can only summon the ship in very specific areas and outdoor regions. Out of all the times I played this game, I only found one particular use for the gunship, and it's in this area right here. Now that's satisfying, but you can only do that so many times, and it's a shame too because you get so many ship upgrades throughout the course of the game, but in the end it's all rather pointless. Poor gunship, but hey, at least you can get bumper stickers for it. Unfortunately, because I guess the PED suit doesn't like company, there really aren't any suit upgrades except for these purple shoulders you can get in the space-powered homeworld that protect you from the planet's acid rain. I'm not exactly a fan overall of the PED suit's look, but that could be just my nostalgic preference for the Varia suit and the Gravity suit. The power bomb is also nowhere to be seen in this game, and there's also no beam combo upgrades in this game either, so if you were a fan of the super missile, it's not here anymore. Well, kind of. Let's get into the main gimmick of the game, Hyper Mode. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the PED suit allows Samus to tap into the phazon she's now creating inside her body and use it as a weapon. Remember how the Omega suit in Prime 1 allowed you to use the Hyper Beam when standing in pure phazon? Well, it's very much like that, only you have access to it now at all times. Okay, it does cost an energy tank to enter Hyper Mode, but that really doesn't mean a goddamn thing. While in Hyper Mode, Samus' firepower increases tremendously. I'm serious, she can kill just about anything that isn't a boss with little to no effort. And when enemies die, they often drop health pickups that will most likely restore all the health you spent to enter Hyper Mode in the first place. She can even get upgrades for this mode, like the Hyper Missile, the Hyper Grapple, and Hyper Ball, effectively making this God mode. A single use of Hyper Mode only lasts a short amount of time, and the PED suit will automatically kick you out of Hyper Mode after about 25 seconds, but eventually throughout the course of the plot, Samus will begin overloading in Phazon. During a Phazon overload, you have to consume all remaining energy you have left in Hyper Mode before Samus becomes totally corrupted, causing a game over. But all this really does is prolong your time in Hyper Mode, making battles even easier. As you can guess, with access to this game breaker, Metroid Prime 3 is the easiest game in the Prime series. I think it might be the easiest game in the Metroid franchise in general. I can't be too sure on that, but I think it's a safe assumption. In fact, the overall structure of Metroid Prime 3 is very streamlined and user-friendly now that I think about it, and I think this was an attempt to appeal to the general audience outside of the Metroid fanbase. The game, first off, is definitely not as puzzle-heavy as Prime 1 or Prime 2. Most puzzles are often relegated to simply scanning something to figure out the solution, or using the grapple lasso to reveal something you can shoot. It's also really easy to stock up on energy tags, as most of them are really easy to find. This game also has a greater focus on shooting things to advance to other areas, and the backtracking is kept to a minimum. It's still there, but nowhere near as prevalent as it was in Prime 1 and especially Prime 2. For the record, Metroid Prime 3 is nowhere near as bad as Metroid Prime Hunters in terms of structure. Yeah, there's a bigger emphasis on shooting here like in that game, but unlike Prime Hunters, this game is still largely an adventure game and has that Metroid feel. Just wanted to get that out there. Thanks to the Aurora unit constantly telling you where to go next, it's almost impossible to get lost in Metroid Prime 3, and the game as a whole is not as long as the first two Prime games. Personally, I'm absolutely okay with most of these changes. Metroid Prime 3 is a great game to introduce newcomers to the Metroid Prime universe. While I personally admire the setup of the first Prime game above all the others, I can't deny that Metroid Prime 3 does a good job in keeping things simple for the sake of getting more people to play it. That's not to say the game doesn't have its problems. Oh no, this game definitely has its share, and as you can probably guess, they all involve the Wii mode. Now, franchises making the jump into the Nintendo Wii had a horrible tendency of adding stupid motion gimmicks just for the sake of having a motion gimmick. Nintendo themselves was rather good at avoiding this, but it was a problem that plagued a lot of games back at the Nintendo Wii's debut, especially ports. Metroid Prime 3 loves to constantly remind you that you're playing this game on the Nintendo Wii by having you use motion controls to perform rather mundane tasks. Press those key codes! Shoot those targets! Twist that panel! Calibrate that panel! Shoot the specific enemy! Rip off that panel! Again! 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 Pump that son bitch up! Yeah, it can get rather tiresome. I'm all for immersing the player into the game, but I think they went a little overboard here. And finally, as I already mentioned, because Hyper Mode is so readily accessible and abusable, the game as a whole is rather easy, perhaps too easy. Just about every single creature in this game can be obliterated with Hyper Mode, and as a result, it removes almost all challenge. Metroids? Pfft, Hyper Beam. Bosses? Pfft, Hyper Beam. Omega Ridley? X-Ray Visor? And then Hyper Beam. Sure, you can always not use Hyper Mode, but there are times where enemies themselves have a Hyper Mode of their own, and the best way to deal with them is to enter Hyper Mode yourself. Killing them regularly is a chore because Hyper Mode enemies take a lot of abuse. The game wants you to constantly use Hyper Mode, but doesn't accommodate the rest of the game's challenge for its sheer brokenness. Again, since I suck at segues, let's go back to the story for a bit. Along Samus's travels, she will indeed come across the missing bounty hunters, but because of Dark Samus's influence, they've all turned evil and want Samus dead. I'd be more emotionally conflicted with fighting my fellow bounty hunters, but this game barely gives any of these characters any sort of character development, with maybe the exception of Rundus, who's easily the most memorable of the three, but only because he has the most interaction with Samus. I couldn't care less about Gore, he's just not that interesting to me at all, and Gandrada is about as basic as you can get. Metroid Prime 3 is definitely the most story-driven of the Prime series thanks to the healthy abundance of cutscenes and dialogue, but it doesn't do a very good job in the development department. Samus herself continues her role as the heroic mime, though there are times where I wish she could at least speak up, like here when she's trying to fend off Dark Samus away from the corrupted Gore. Hey, stop that! Get away from him, come on! Soon after cleaning up all three infected planets, the Galactic Federation locates the source of all Phazon, the sentient planet Phase. Inside lurks Dark Samus, but in order to reach Phase to begin with, we need access to the Leviathan, a ship that allows us to reach Phase via a wormhole. But in order to gain access to the Leviathan, we need the input codes located inside this abandoned ship called the Valhalla, which can only be fully explored by having enough energy cells.
Can you see where this is going?
Yeah, the energy cells are this game's equivalent to Prime 1's Chozo artifacts and Prime 2's Sky Temple keys. There are a grand total of 10.
However,
unlike Prime 1 or Prime 2, you don't need all 10 energy cells in order to gain access to the room that has the input codes, you only need 5. And unlike Prime 1 or 2, you collect energy cells as you move along the story. In fact, if you explore just about every room possible before reaching the Valhalla, you should already have about 6 energy cells, more than enough to reach the room.
Thank you! Now that's how you collect plot MacGuffins!
After getting the access code, Samus along with the entire fleet of troopers from the Galactic Federation begin to invade the planet Phase. Well, actually only Samus enters the planet, the Federation gets caught up in a space battle with the remaining space pirates. Because Phase itself is nothing but Phazon, as soon as Samus takes one step on the planet, her body overloads on Phazon, leaving her in a permanent hyper mode for the remainder of her journey. From this point, you only have a limited amount of time to reach the final boss before you die from corruption. Luckily, you're in hyper mode, so you'll blow through everything with no problem. You can even collect health to prolong your stay. Deep inside the core of Phase awaits Dark Samus, who behaves rather similar to how she did in Prime 2. This time, however, you have hyper mode, so she's not a problem at all. However, it turns out that Dark Samus has something up her sleeve this time, the Valhalla's Aurora unit, which has been corrupted by the Phazon. Figures the final boss of the trilogy will be a wannabe Mother Brain of some sort, but unfortunately this boss is pathetically easy. Again, thanks to hyper mode. Seriously, it's a joke. In no time, Samus destroys the Aurora unit along with Dark Samus for the last time, ending the Metroid Prime series.
Sir, we have confirmed unstable energy spikes in multiple locations on the planet.
The planet's going to explode!
Order the fleet to disengage and prepare.
That always brings a certain joy to my heart.
Phase explodes and Samus sends her regards. If you collected enough items, Samus takes a breather to recollect her journey and remember the fallen. I would too, if I gave a shit. Well, maybe for a run test, but barely. However, if you manage to get all the items, as soon as Samus leaves the planet, a ship appears behind Samus' gunship and proceeds to follow her. I hear that the ship belongs to Silex from Metroid Prime Hunters, which I hope is not true. I'd rather not have anything returned from that game. But who knows though, it could be an entirely new character. Now, as the grand finale of the Prime series, I think Metroid Prime 3 Corruption does a fairly decent job. The motion controls work very well, the game as a whole is very well structured, and the game at no point feels like a drag. There are times where I think the game gets a bit too gun-happy at points, especially with the use of hyper mode, but overall, it's a Metroid game that casual gamers can get into and satisfy the veterans as well. Graphically speaking, I think it does a better job than Prime 2, but I'm not exactly sure how I think it holds up against Prime 1. I mean, the environments are good looking and it doesn't get too monotonous along the way, but it does feel rather boxed in at times. I can't really say much about the music because I don't remember much of it. Like Metroid 2 and Metroid Other M, a lot of it is atmospheric, which can work, but I'd rather have some catchy tunes like in the 2D games. If you want to get into the Prime series, start with Metroid Prime 3. It's a good starting point. Who knows, it might even make you a Metroid fan in general. But alas, we're not exactly done yet. You see, 2 years after the Metroid Prime series concluded, a compilation called Metroid Prime Trilogy was released, containing all 3 games in the Metroid Prime universe. In addition to having all 3 games in the Prime series, the first 2 games were also given Metroid Prime 3's motion controls, and for the most part, they worked just as well as they did in Prime 3. But to be completely honest, it's a bit of a pain at times, especially when you want to switch weapons. In the original, you only had to press the corresponding button on the C-stick, but in the Trilogy edition, you have to hold down the minus button, move the cursor to the weapon you want to pick, and release the minus button to pick it. It's a bit convoluted and kind of breaks the flow for me. Though that's really the only problem I have with the added motion controls. Other than that, they work just fine. Both Prime 1 and Prime 2 were given minor graphical updates like added bloom effects and actual widescreen support, so if that's your kind of thing, then this compilation is for you. You can also listen to all 3 soundtracks from the game and look at all sorts of concept artwork in the gallery. You can even unlock a bobblehead for your gunship in Metroid Prime 3. Teehee! Metroid Prime Trilogy is certainly something every Metroid fan should have in their collection. Unfortunately, it was discontinued some time ago, and as a result, it can fetch for some pretty high prices on the internet. If you somehow manage to see this game for less than $50, do yourself a favor and snag it! God only knows how much this son of a bitch will cost in a few years.
Well, folks, that's it. That's the very last Metroid game to review. From this point on, I'm only returning to the series when they release a new game. And given Nintendo's track record with that, that could be a while. Regardless, I hope you guys can understand why I'm such a diehard fan of the franchise in general. Yeah, it had its ups and downs, but what franchise doesn't? The Metroid series can be a hell of a lot of fun, especially with games like Super Metroid, Metroid Prime 1, Metroid Fusion, and Metroid Zero Mission. So if you ever find yourself bored and looking for something new to try out, give Metroid a shot. You might really like it. So what next? Oh, you know what? I got a lot of people asking if I can do... Son of a bitch, I thought I turned it off.
Hello, Johnny.
Ted? It's not time for a commentary, is it?
Johnny, isn't there something you need to work on?
I told you before, the second Sonic animation was completed months ago.
Not that. Didn't you say you would do a certain month of if I completed the first Legend of Zelda game fair and square?
But you used an emulator, Ted. That's not legitimate.
Well, you never said I couldn't use an emulator, so suck it up, bitch. I win by technicality.
No, but Ted, those are RPGs. If I won't do a month of Final Fantasy, why the hell would I do a month of Pokemon?
We made a bet, John, and you lost. Now give me my month of Pokemon or...
Son of a bitch. Hello?
You can't escape me, asshole. Now stop being such a pussy and do the...
Alright. Jesus Christ. Well, a bet's a bet. Bring on the Pokemon.